Okay. Okay, Mr. Edwards, thank you for sitting down with us and taking the time to do this. I know you weren't really thrilled about the idea of doing this interview.
Well, let's hope it doesn't take too much time.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into doing private investigations?
After I graduated high school, I joined the military. I spent 2 years in Iraq after spending 2 years domestically. And then after my 4 years in the military, I went to get my criminal justice degree. And after that, even though I had the opportunity to join law enforcement, I decided to go into business for myself as a private investigator, and I've been doing that for the past 12 years.
What type of cases do you usually take on?
Most of the cases are missing persons, and most of those involve children or young adults, teenagers. Most are brought to me by parents who are not satisfied with a case being closed and come to me to answer questions and to try and find some sort of closure to their specific case. Again, the missing persons cases, usually by the time they get to me, there are very few possibilities as to the whereabouts of the missing person. Most of them end up with not very happy endings. But I've also dealt with adultery cases, missing spouses, people going on vacation and not returning. So I've looked into all sorts of different cases, but vast majority of those are missing cases, missing persons.
How did you get involved in this particular case?
Well, Mr. Sampson called me after law enforcement decided that there was nothing more that they could do. He was not okay with that as an answer, as most of the people who hire me are not okay with being told we don't know or not having an answer one way or the other. So he hired me to try and bring some closure to the case of his daughter specifically, but also for the other 3 young people that went missing.
Would you call this a typical missing persons case?
Well, any case where you have persons who are missing, that I believe would be classified as a missing persons case.
Well, more specifically, there's been a lot of rumors around this case. The possibility that it's a hoax, the possibility that maybe family members were in on this. Do you have any belief yourself that this may have been a hoax? Do you think there's any reason to believe that?
Well, I don't subscribe to beliefs per se. Beliefs are a pretty slippery slope. I do have some ideas based on the evidence that I found. Mr. Sampson did not hire me so that I could speculate, so that I could partake in any of this hoax garbage. I look at the evidence that I have, I try to find facts, and I form ideas based on those facts. Anything relevant to the case, based on what I have available, are the things that I talk to Mr. Sampson about. Everything else is just not worth my time or Mr. Sampson's time.
Mr. Sampson's been pretty outspoken in his criticism of both the media and the police and how they handled the investigation. Do you think he's justified in those opinions?
Well, it's not my place to say, really. Mr. Sampson has his own reasons for saying whatever he says. He's entitled to those. I have people who I know in the police department that was involved, and to say that they botched the case is pretty harsh. They are bound to certain obligations. They are bound to things that are out of their control individually, which is why I was hired, because I have the ability to go above and beyond what law enforcement are able to do. And the fact that you're here with a camera suggests that Mr. Sampson may want to put some information out publicly, which the media has not done up to this point.
Did you look into the backgrounds of Peyton and Riley, Kelly, and Rick?
Well, since those are the people involved, yes, I looked into their backgrounds without going into too much detail. I looked at each one of them, their histories, any run-ins with the law, what they were like, their involvement on social media, who they hung out with, and used all of that information to try and find out what happened.
Based on that information, do you think any of them would be capable, or is the type of person that would be involved in faking something, with faking their own disappearances?
At this point, I do not believe that any of them faked their disappearance. None of the evidence points in that direction at all. So I am focusing on other avenues that have to do with them not faking their disappearance. Again, I can't go into detail. Mr. Sampson hired me in complete confidence, so I guess you'll have to ask him if you want some more detail about that.
Okay. Mr. Sampson recently won a legal battle with the police to get his daughter's belongings back. Among those was the camcorder that Peyton used when they were at the cabin, and that has certainly been at the center of a lot of the rumors of the hoaxes. Have you had a chance to look at that footage?
Well, again, Mr. Sampson hired me to try and find answers to his daughter's disappearance, so I think it would be a reasonable assumption to make that I've seen the footage, just like I have looked into the backgrounds of the 4 missing persons. So is there another question that you are getting at, or are we going to dance around what you're hoping to find out?
When you saw the camcorder footage, is there anything on there that helps you understand what might have happened, that puts you in a new direction in terms of your investigation?
Well, I'm not going to get into specifics of what is on the footage. Again, I am looking for any information, any evidence, any facts that I can use that will help solve the case.
Okay. Mr. Sampson has shown us bits and pieces of the footage, and one of the things that comes up a few times is this symbol that that we've tried to publicize. We've looked into it, and we haven't been able to figure out what it means. I know that you've looked into it. The police looked into it. Do you have any thoughts or insights on that symbol? Is it relevant to the case at all, or is it just something that you think doesn't, it just showed up but doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on?
I was hired to look into everything that I deem as relevant to the case, anything that I think will help find the missing persons involved. So, without going into specifics, anything that I think is noteworthy, I am looking into seriously. You know my track record. If not, I'm sure you can find it. I am 100% looking after Mr. Sampson's interests, which is to find his daughter. Anything outside of that is really none of my concern.
Based on the footage that you've seen, do you think it's more likely that there's foul play involved, or more likely that this is simply a case where they may have gone off into the woods and gotten lost, and it was snowing at the time? Is there a particular direction that you think is more likely?
We're exploring multiple possibilities. We have not come to a conclusion yet. We are looking into all possibilities where there's evidence that may support those possibilities. Outside of that, I'm not going to get into details about what I think happened or what the leading theory is on what happened.
Mr. Sampson has talked with us about the possibility of releasing the camcorder footage now that it's back in his possession. What do you think of that idea?
I have talked to Mr. Sampson about it and have advised him against it. I think the less coverage, the better. That will enable me to do my job, and that will enable Mr. Sampson to not get involved directly with outside institutions or people that may, hinder our work and our ability to objectively find an answer to the case.
But don't you think that publicizing this a little bit more, getting pictures out there, isn't that going to develop more leads? Wouldn't that be helpful?
My job is to solve the case for Mr. Sampson. My job is to do what he has asked me to do. So I'm not going to go into things which I'm not really an expert on. If there was more coverage or if there was more light shed on the case, perhaps it could help, but only in certain circumstances. Sometimes, as you said before, rumors and whatnot, it's a slippery slope. And again, my job is to solve the case for Mr. Sampson. And I'm really not involved in his decisions as far as that's concerned. I think that's more your area of expertise.
You've been working on this case for over a year now, and I know that you're not even charging Mr. Sampson anymore. Is it typical for you to stay on a case like this?
Well, every case is different, and I feel that Mr. Sampson deserves an answer, which up to this point no one has been able to provide. But I also have my career to protect, and it would be in pretty poor taste to give up right now when I don't feel that we've exhausted every possibility, and I don't think that the work is done as far as this case is concerned. I am working pro bono because I take myself seriously, and quite frankly, doing things like this is taking more time away from the job and taking more time away from possibly getting closer to solving this case.
I'm gonna ask you one more time. Can you
Of
share?
course you are.
Can you share with us what you think happened to Peyton and her friends at the cabin?
No.
Do you have any new leads that you're exploring at this point?
I'm looking at all the evidence. I'm looking at all the facts that I have, all the information, and I am looking into every possible avenue that I can go down into solving this case.
How much longer do you think you'll keep working on this?
Well, as long as it takes, as long as I'm satisfied that I can no longer improve our chances of finding the missing persons. As long as there is any shred of doubt, I will continue to work with Mr. Sampson to find out what happened.
Okay, well, thank you for taking the time to sit down with us and talk, and we definitely wish you the best of luck in the investigation. Hope that you're able to turn something up soon.
Well, the sooner I can get back to work, the better.
Okay, thank you.